March 23rd, Souda Bay, Crete. The NATO Marathi Pier Complex, specifically Pier K14, is one of the few facilities in the Mediterranean capable of accommodating the draft and sheer mass of a Ford-class aircraft carrier. At deep draft, the hull reaches nearly 40 feet below the waterline. The USS Gerald R Ford, CVN-78, eases toward the concrete. The berthing process is slow. It relies on the raw horsepower of Greek harbor tugs and the precise coordination of the ship's deck department. Heaving lines are thrown. Thick Kevlar mooring hawsers are dragged across the pier and dropped over massive steel bollars. Capstans whine as they take up the slack. A ship displacing over 100,000 tons does not simply park. It is secured against the kinetic energy of the ocean. For the 4,500 sailors and Marines aboard, the sound of the mooring lines tensioning signals a temporary halt to a grueling operational tempo. The ship has been at sea for roughly 9 months. This duration pushes the crew and the machinery to the absolute limits of their design specifications. It is an extended deployment bordering on historic records for modern carrier strike groups. But this port call is not a scheduled Liberty visit. It is a critical maintenance halt. A $13 billion warship is ultimately a collection of highly complex, interrelated mechanical systems. And right now, several of those systems are failing. To understand the current state of the USS Gerald R Ford, one must look closely at the events of March 12th. At sea, fire is the ultimate adversary. A steel hull is an inescapable environment. There is no fire department to call. Every sailor is a firefighter. On March 12th, alarm sounded for a casualty in one of the ship's primary laundry facilities. Carrier laundry rooms are industrial-scale operations. They run continuously to service the thousands of personnel aboard. They generate immense heat, rely on heavy-duty electrical circuits, and produce highly flammable lint. The exact ignition source remains locked in damage control reports. What is known is the mechanical reality of shipboard fire response. The general quarters alarm rings. Damage control central coordinates the response. Within minutes, repair lockers dispatch rapid response teams. Sailors don thick firefighting ensembles and SCBA gear, self-contained breathing apparatus. They move through narrow passageways and down steep ladders, carrying thermal imagers to locate the seat of the fire through dense, toxic smoke. Shipboard fires are fought by establishing boundaries. Primary and secondary boundaries are set on all 6 sides of the affected compartment, above, below, and on all 4 adjacent bulkheads. Sailors physically feel the steel walls for heat transfer. Ventilation systems to the zone are immediately secured to starve the fire of oxygen. Electrical breakers are tripped. The fire on March 12th was contained and extinguished. The ship survived, but the aftermath of a localized fire on a carrier has cascading effects. The deployment of extinguishing agents, whether water or chemical, damages adjacent electrical runs. Smoke travels through ventilation ducting, leaving corrosive soot on sensitive circuitry far from the actual blaze. For the crew, the loss of a primary laundry facility drastically degrades quality of life. Uniforms cannot be cleaned efficiently. Bedding goes unwashed. Hygiene standards become difficult to maintain during a deployment already stretching into its 9th month. But the fire is only one vector of the current crisis. The USS Gerald R Ford arrived in Souda Bay battling a fundamental breakdown in basic sanitation. The Ford class does not use a traditional gravity-fed plumbing system. It utilizes a ship-wide vacuum waste system, conceptually similar to what is used on commercial airliners, but scaled to service over 4,000 people. The engineering theory behind the vacuum system is weight reduction. By using vacuum suction instead of gravity and water pressure, designers could use miles of narrower piping, saving significant weight and space within the hull. The operational reality has proven deeply problematic. The vacuum system relies on a delicate balance of pressure, motorized valves, and specific chemical treatments. When 4,000 people use the system continuously for 9 months, uric acid builds up inside the narrow pipes. This scale hardens. It narrows the diameter of the pipes further. Eventually, the suction fails. Entire blocks of toilet facilities go offline simultaneously. Fixing this is not a matter of simply clearing a clog. The maintenance requires an intensive ship-wide acid flush. Engineering technicians must isolate sections of the vacuum piping. They pump specialized highly caustic descaling chemicals through the network to dissolve the hardened acid scale. It is a hazardous, time-consuming process. It requires shutting down essential facilities for extended periods. When toilets are unavailable, disease vectors increase. Morale plummets. The psychological toll of living in a steel box without reliable sanitation after 9 months of high-stress operations cannot be overstated. The stop in Souda Bay provides the stable platform and external contractor support necessary to execute a comprehensive chemical flush of the system. Yet, laundry fires and plumbing failures, while critical to human endurance, do not directly stop an aircraft carrier from fighting. The third issue, bringing the USS Gerald R Ford to the pier in Crete, strikes at the core of its lethal capability. The ship is experiencing critical anomalies with EMLS, the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System. For over 60 years, aircraft carriers relied on steam catapults. Steam from the nuclear reactors was routed into massive cylinders beneath the flight deck to drive a piston forward. It was mechanically complex, heavy, and violently aggressive on the airframes of the jets. The Ford class replaced steam with electromagnetism. EMLS relies on linear induction motors. To launch an F-18 Super Hornet weighing over 40,000 pounds, the system must generate a staggering amount of electrical energy in a fraction of a second. This requires energy storage groups. Massive flywheels deep within the ship spin at high speeds, storing kinetic energy. When the launch officer presses the button, that kinetic energy is instantly converted into a massive electrical pulse. This pulse travels through solid-state power conversion systems. It enters the linear induction motor track embedded in the flight deck. A moving armature, attached to the nose gear of the aircraft, rides an electromagnetic wave down the track, accelerating the jet to launch speed smoothly and precisely. It is a marvel of modern physics, but it is highly sensitive. Continuous operations over a 9-month deployment subject the EMLS components to severe thermal and mechanical stress. The power conversion systems generate immense heat. The physical track requires micromillimeter alignment. If the solid-state switches degrade, or if the software regulating the electromagnetic pulse encounters timing errors, the system cannot safely launch aircraft. An aborted launch, a cold cat, results in an aircraft ditching into the ocean off the bow. Troubleshooting EMLS at sea is inherently difficult. The system is deeply integrated into the ship's integrated electrical grid. Isolating the massive power flows to conduct safe repairs while underway restricts the ship's ability to maneuver and fight. Bringing the ship to Pier K14 allows Naval Sea Systems command engineers and civilian contractors from General Atomics to board the vessel. They bring specialized diagnostic equipment that cannot be easily flown out to a ship underway. They can tap into shore power, shutting down sections of the carrier's nuclear-generated electrical grid to safely pull apart the power conversion modules of the EMLS system. They must recalibrate the software that dictates the pulse timing. They must inspect the thermal management systems that keep the solid-state electronics from melting under the massive electrical loads. The clock is running. The Eastern Mediterranean remains a highly volatile theater. The presence of a United States carrier strike group is a primary deterrent. Every day, the USS Gerald R Ford remains tied to the pier in Souda Bay is a day a massive hole exists in the regional security architecture. Supply chains are currently surging parts to Crete. Heavy lift transport aircraft are landing at the nearby Chania International Airport, unloading pallets of specialized components, pipe fittings, electrical relays, solid-state switches, and damage control equipment. Aboard the ship, the crew works in shifts. While contractors dismantle the EMLS power modules, The ship's engineering department oversees the vacuum system acid flushes. The damage control divisions continue the grueling process of cutting away burnt wiring and scrubbing soot from the ventilation shafts near the laundry facilities. It is a synchronized industrial effort. The goal is rapid reconstitution. 9 months of saltwater, friction, heat, and human habitation degrade steel and silicon alike. The USS Gerald R Ford represents the absolute bleeding edge of naval architecture, but technology does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in the corrosive, unforgiving environment of the open ocean. The repairs in Souda Bay are not merely routine maintenance. They are the mandatory restoration of a combat asset. The carrier must be fixed. The systems must be purged, recalibrated, and tested. The crew must be given a momentary reset, because when the mooring lines are finally cast off, the ship will not turn west toward home. It will turn back toward the operating area. The deployment continues. The aircraft must fly. Would you like me to adjust the pacing of this script, or perhaps focus even deeper on the operational history of the EMLS system?